Yes.
Hello, this is Donald Trump from Mr. Cohn. Thank you so much.
Donald who?
It's the film Donald Trump didn't want you to see. And a warning, this film and this podcast talk about assault.
What if you lost your fortune today?
Well, then maybe I'll run for president. I don't know.
After battling funding shortfalls, writers' strikes, and threats of lawsuits from the former president himself, The Apprentice is finally in cinemas, with just a few days to go until the US presidential election.
It's going to be the finest building in the world. It's going to be a spectacular hotel. Absolutely spectacular. I got flair and I'm smart, so I think that's going to make me successful.
It stars Sebastian Stan as a young Donald Trump, telling the story of how he started his real estate business in an economically and politically distracted 1970s New York City. The film focuses on Trump's relationship with an infamous lawyer who was his legal counsel, mentor and friend, played by Jeremy Strong.
The Roy Cohn from all the papers and everything?
That's right, the Roy Cohn from all the papers, that's right.
Yeah, you're brutal.
I'm brutal,
Yeah.
That's right.
The film features scenes that get progressively less flattering. Trump downing amphetamine weight loss pills, getting liposuction, getting his bald spots surgically removed, and most controversially, a scene where he's portrayed to be raping his then-wife Ivana Trump. Kia ora, I'm Davina Zimmer, and on The Detail today, I joined Kate Roger on one of her favourite activities, a midday cinema excursion.
I'm always fascinated when films like this come out in an election year. I don't know why I didn't really rush to see it. I think I get quite a nauseous feeling in my stomach whenever I look at Donald Trump. And I don't know if it's even a political thing to say. I think his story has always made me uncomfortable. Even though I love Sebastian Stan, I was just like, how can the dude from the Marvel films ever drive this story home? I thought it was excellent. I found it an emotional watch and also quite a revolting watch, but also kind of an enlightening watch.
Let's talk about casting, because you touched on Sebastian Stan.
You're going to ruin your life if you don't marry me. Why? 1 second, listen,
Why is that?
because I'm rich, I'm handsome, I have a great family, I'm going to be the number one builder in New York. Listen to me.
Obviously, Trump has been characterised in quite a few skits, like
SNL,
Saturday
yeah.
Night Live,
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin, with the very drastic orange face and very over-the-top acting.
I am so excited to live in the White House. I'm even going to have a little pet, like all the presidents do. Bill Clinton had socks, Barack Obama had Bo, and I'll have Paul Ryan.
Sebastian Stan's performance was a lot more muted, wasn't it?
It was so clever and so good. I think there is so much opportunity to kind of blow him into exactly as you said, the Alec Baldwin version, which is all done for maximum lols. But also it's very easy to cruelly, let's say that, let's humanise him and lampoon a man that, is a big, twisty. He's orange and has this alarming quiff and some very weird affectation. So he's a very easy man, I would imagine, to take the piss out of in that way. And what we saw from the very beginning with Sebastian was actually, I think, really fortuitous that he didn't have to go through that whole process or have time to put on all of this extra weight, because he brought us in the early days of Donald Trump when he was regarded as a relatively handsome dude before he became the Trump we see today. But it was the slow kind of infusion of the way that he spoke and his mouth particularly. And he kind of morphs really slowly, changing his way he held himself, but more his confidence levels and how he dealt with people. And his early relationship with Roy compared to how the relationship was at the end of the film, he just became indomitable.
We see this story develop and this relationship develop between Roy Cohn and Donald Trump. And in that, we kind of get a look behind the mask, because you're right, Donald Trump is this character of sorts. But in this movie, we see this human element of him.
I've found the humanisation of him made him even more repugnant to me. And I also found that, as you talked about, we're with him the whole time. And this is a big kind of, let's draw back the curtains on this version of what we're showing you as filmmakers who Donald Trump is. And it's not even some of the worst things. And I just found I did come away feeling repulsed by him, and I was fascinated by the choice of how they finished this film, which was basically him having the fat sucked out of him It was a really graphic kind of, we want you to leave the cinema feeling repulsed and revolted by him. We segue into that, into the version that we kind of know of him now, which is this phenomenal egomaniac that has a version of himself that wants to pay a well-known writer to write a book about him, and this is the version of me. And it was him. He'd become, that's who he was. And I found that level of self-belief utterly terrifying.
And it was a writer who'd actually written a negative article about him, and then he said, oh, but I'm paying you now, so you're going to write good things about me. Look at that
simple way of looking at it. I mean, he's a businessman. Really, it's all about the deal and the art of making deals and money, money, money. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the power, but the art of making the deal.
You see this dynamic shift between him and Roy, where at the beginning, Roy, even though physically he's not a very big man, like Donald Trump is taller than him and bigger than him, he still dominates the room that he's in.
Well, hello there.
How's it going?
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Have a seat. We're not going to bite.
There you go.
What's your name, handsome?
I'm Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, nice to meet you. Roy Cohn.
By the end of this movie, when he's close to his deathbed, he's this shell of a man.
That's right.
Of a presence. And you see this shift in power domination.
Yeah. That whole concept around dealing with the AIDS epidemic, that's a big part of the story. And Roy Cohn, his relationship with Trump, you could see Trump kind of, it was such a user relationship. He knew that Roy was good for him, but there was the father figure aspect for both of them, I think, that he was the guy that was giving him the support when clearly his father wasn't doing so. But Jeremy Strong, he's a very method actor, but gosh, he was out. They were both just really terrific in this film. Also, what we really do see here, which anybody that's read anything about Donald Trump, I think they perfectly executed the notion of his vanity, like not just egomaniac side of him, but his enormous vanity. What I understood of him in the way that he is portrayed on camera, which is the only thing we have to base ourselves on, is just this kind of bizarre impression he has of himself that he's a handsome man. And what we get to see in this is him deciding that he's fat and going to extreme, he wants to sit down with a plastic surgeon and he wants to get wants the fat gone because he doesn't want to exercise. Why would he do that? But he's also incredibly concerned with how people see him, while at the same time not really fully understanding how people see him.
How do you think an actor prepares for a role like that?
I think he or she does a lot of preparation before they say yes to that, because how do you say yes to playing one of the most well-known people on the planet? And if we look at the years we've had since his ascendance to the throne, it's been an insane time globally. So you cannot imagine that Sebastian Stan even looked at a project, or his agent said to him, or whoever said to him, Aliaba said to him, I want you to play Donald Trump, that he wouldn't have spent an enormous amount of time thinking about how he was going to do that before he even signed on. I do know that the film had been slated to be shot several years ago, and then suddenly it didn't have any money, and then it was an availability issue for Sebastian Stan, I think, due to his Marvel commitments. But suddenly it was like, we've got to go, we've got to do it now. And he had no time for the physicality of the prep. Like, he didn't have time to put on lots of weight, which he wanted to do for the film. So I think...
I heard he ate ramen with soy sauce.
Same.
Last minute.
The director was like, we have a month and a half, like, how much weight can you gain? And and I called this nutritionist, and they were like, you just need to start drinking beer now. And I was like, yeah, but...
It's a tough life, isn't it?
No, but he doesn't drink. He doesn't drink. And I was like, I'm not going to drink. So then...
Oh, you went full method, right?
So then he said, I said, what else can you do? And he said, you got to get ramen and put soy sauce in it, like, every day, and you'll get a good bloat.
So this story is right at the beginning, before he'd even become a real estate mogul, and also hadn't been bankrupted 700 times and been indicted, all of those things that we kind of know about Donald Trump now. So when we first meet him, I thought, are they trying to gain not trying to, maybe have a balanced look or have some insight into his family and his dynamic with his father and what drove him to seek success, I guess, and power. And they tried to give us a pretty good insight into that in a way when his life was a more simpler life. He drove himself around and he hadn't made his money.
Here's the film's director, Ali Abbasi.
We really focus on this special period of young Donald Trump's life where he goes through this transformational journey through the mentorship of Roy Cohn. And through that mentorship, he sort of gets all these education and tools he needs to gain power, manipulate power. And that is really the subject of the movie, this like how you gain power, how the power system works.
I think at the beginning we almost have this sense of this poor little boy who's in his father's shadow. And I think that this is something that the director, Ali Abbasi, was trying to do, is to humanise this character. Yeah. Because he is a character, right? For most of us, Donald Trump...
It's a wise move as a filmmaker. Yeah. Life isn't black and white. It's a whole lot of grey, and people are the way they are for various reasons. And agreed, I think that's exactly what they were trying to do. And they probably were clever to do so.
One thing that caught my eye in the film was a fake Coke can. It didn't have any Coca-Cola branding, but it was obviously a Coke can. I asked Kate why they didn't just use a real one.
It's a hot potato when you make a film in an election year, or you release a film in an election year, or you make a film about Donald Trump. And in fact, this story is a perfect way of describing how politics works. And I would argue in the States it works with power and money and leverage. You can understand how putting a project down in that environment and saying this is a story we are going to tell about a current political figure, one who is running to go for the White House again. It must be something that you could imagine sitting down and going, hey, we need a couple of extra $100K to make this film. Let's try and leverage it with a bit of product placement. Wouldn't be a very easy sell.
And do you think it was a case of investors kind of looking at this film and thinking, this isn't going to go down well with a man who's potentially going to be the future president? We don't want our name on it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I was trying to say, is that it almost sets up the reality for funding a film, is that we don't really want to be involved. But that could be said about any political film or any subject matter that might be considered to be contentious, or a documentary or whatever it may be. People might not want to be involved. There could be lots of silent partners.
The creators of the film have maintained this isn't a Trump biopic, but more of a behind-the-scenes look at Trump's relationship with Roy Cohn, who many see as pivotal in how Trump became Trump.
This is very much a story about Roy Cohn, his lawyer from the very beginning, who, if this story wanted you to have an understanding of what an impact he had in perhaps creating the Donald Trump that we see now. And by no means was that man an ethical lawyer, and the way that he operated either within the confines of ethical law, but certainly beyond the actual law, saw him obviously getting into trouble with the FBI and being indicted. But there was a whole other personal story to that. And it kind of bleeds into that notion of what's fair in politics and power. And Donald Trump, without any spoilers, has 3 rules that he stole from Roy Cohn that are shocking.
The first rule is the simplest. Attack, attack, attack.
Rule 2. Admit nothing, deny everything.
Rule 3. This is the most important rule of all. No matter what happens, no matter what they say about you, no matter how beaten you are, you claim victory and never admit defeat. Never admit defeat.
Kind of makes so much sense about how he operates in regards to what we perceive to be the truth, which I think is one of the biggest things with Donald Trump, as we're in a post-truth era where the truth is what he says it is, or what someone else says it is, as long as it's his truth, and deny, deny, deny. And I found that fascinating.
The movie was released roughly 2 weeks before Election Day, prompting whispers and blatant headlines that the creators behind it wanted to sway voters in a certain direction. But Kate doesn't think the timing of the release of The Apprentice was a tactical move.
I don't feel like there's anything in this film that people don't already have access to. This relationship between him and Cohen, I think, is a fascinating story, and I'm really glad I saw it. If I was a Trump supporter, would seeing that movie change anything? I'd argue no.
We seem to be so obsessed with these kind of movies that put a character's life on screen. Where do you think that curiosity comes from?
Well, it's the same thing not the same thing, but people just absolutely love a true crime podcast, don't they? We want to be in a position where you give us somebody, whether it's an Elton John or a Freddie Mercury, whoever it might be, and I want you to tell us their version of their story. And, in my view, I don't see this as a biopic by any stretch. A biopic for me is an all-encompassing story of somebody's life, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be a slice of or an insight into. I mean, real life is really what it's all about. It's addictive, and all good stories are steeped in some kind of humanity one way or the other, whether they be a superhero story or an animated story. They do carry enormous power. I now want to spend at least a couple of hours diving into a whole lot of things that have come up in this story, because I kind of went into it blind. It makes you want to go and find out the truth from fiction, if you like, because it is always going to be a dramatic version of a story. And it's not like Donald sat down with the filmmakers and with Ali and Sebastian and said, let's make a movie about my life.
Well, no, he did quite the opposite, didn't he? He tried to stall it several times.
And successfully. And also, he's obviously slammed it since it's came, surprise, shock and horror.
In a post on his social media platform, Truth Social, on Sunday, Trump called the film a, quote, fake and classless movie, and said he hoped it would, quote, bomb at the box office. Trump's post on Truth Social went on to describe the film as a, quote, cheap, defamatory, and politically disgusting hatchet job, claiming it was, quote, put out right before the 2024 presidential election to try to hurt the greatest political movement in the history of our country, make America great again.
There are sanctioned versions of a story that come out, and Bohemian Rhapsody would be one of those that, and obviously Elton John and Rocket Man, that let's make a story of my life. So it's their version, and it gets signed off by that person. And as we all know, there's a lot more to life than just that version that we have of ourselves. And I think that's probably, weirdly, what was really clever about this, because it's almost a version of Donald that he would have done. Apart from all of the grotesquerie that we saw, the version of him, he probably would have looked at that and gone and been quite stoked about it.
That's what I was going to ask you, because obviously he's called out this movie. I'm not sure if he has seen it or not, but if he did, do you think he'd really hate it as much as he's...
No, I reckon he wouldn't. He would, that's what I mean. And again, I haven't met the man, but you would just get that really weird, smug sense of being in the cinema and somebody have made a movie about him and probably been, oddly quite happy about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. He's such an call him an oddity sounds like I'm not giving him enough credit. But I mean, in terms of a public figure, a president of the United States, we've just never seen anything quite like him.
And do you think that that's the draw to this film, is that even the people who hate him, they will still be drawn to this movie because there's this curiosity about who Donald Trump really is?
Yeah, I do agree. And I definitely felt it. How about you?
I felt that whether you love him or you hate him, it's still a movie that kind of makes you think, okay, he's a person. And this is how he came to be. Do you think this film was accurate?
Again, I'm just looking forward to going home now and putting on my headphones and diving into as much backstory and interviews from the both of them, from Ali to get a bit of a sense. I don't think you can make a film entirely baseless because it would have no credibility at all. We know that Sebastian Stan's depiction of him was, I think, absolutely bang on. We have another storyline with Ivana as well, which I found fascinating. I think it was a really interesting way they portrayed her, and I'd like to know more about her that's beyond the headlines. I don't think anyone would go to this film and if they didn't come away with at least, for me, I feel like at least 3/4 of it at least had to be absolutely bang on because it's such documented, the basis is documented. But it's all going to be subjective about how you feel about Donald Trump in how they depict him. So if you're a massive Trump fan, you are going to hate every minute of it. The truth fiction aspect will become your version of what you consider to be the truth. We don't know. I don't know what how he was at home around the dinner table. I certainly didn't know about his brother Freddie. We don't know about all of those dynamics as they played out behind closed doors. So we just kind of have to assume that the filmmakers are certainly not telling a pro-Trump story. So we do have to factor that in, don't we?
That's it for today. US voters go to the polls this coming Wednesday NZ time. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. Thank you to Kate Roger for letting me tag along on her midday cinema venture. This episode was engineered by William Saunders and produced by Gwen McClure, and I'm Davina Zimmer. Ka kite anō.